Do this right now. If you are sitting, stand up. Take off one of your shoes. Take off the sock. Place your bare foot entirely flat against the floor. Now with your hand, reach out and place your palm perfectly flat against the nearest piece of solid wood. A wooden desk, a door frame, a heavy table. Press your hand firmly into the grain of the wood. Press your bare foot firmly into the floor. Hold that position. Do not move. Pay attention to exactly what you are feeling right now. Notice the temperature of the wood under your palm. Notice how it feels neutral, perhaps even slightly warm, completely unlike the freezing, biting shock of touching a metal railing. Notice the rigid, unyielding pressure pushing back against the sole of your bare foot. Your brain is telling you a very specific, intuitive story right now. It is telling you that you are making physical contact. You believe your skin is touching the wood. You believe the sole of your foot is physically touching the floor. Hold your hand there. Keep your foot planted. You are not touching it. You have never touched a single object in your entire life. Not a doorknob, not a coffee cup, not the screen of your phone, and not the hand of another human being. The electron clouds spinning around the atoms in the outermost layer of your skin inherently, magnetically repel the electron clouds of the atoms in the wood and the floor. The electromagnetic force pushes back across a microscopic gap that never, ever closes. What your brain interprets as physical contact is simply the feeling of repulsive force across empty space. But right now, while you are standing there, across that microscopic gap, something you cannot see is entering your body. And if that piece of wood under your hand was a living tree rooted in the dirt outside, what is crossing that gap right now would literally alter your blood chemistry and your immune system for the next 30 days. Let us start with your bare foot. The Earth's surface is not electrically neutral. It carries a massive, permanent net negative electrical charge. This charge is constantly maintained and replenished by the global electrical circuit, driven by the roughly 2,000 active thunderstorms happening around the planet at any given second. The dirt, the grass, the unpaved ground is a limitless reservoir of free electrons. You are a bioelectrical machine. Your nervous system operates on electrical action potentials. Your heart beats because of an electrical node. Your cells manage their internal environments through voltage-gated ion channels. For 200,000 years of anatomically modern human history, our ancestors walked barefoot, or they wore footwear made of thin, conductive animal hides. Because sweat contains salt and moisture, those leather soles became highly electrically conductive. For 200 millennia, the human body was in constant, unbroken electrical contact with the earth. The human machine was permanently grounded. And then, in the mid-20th century, we did something catastrophically stupid. We mass-produced the synthetic, rubber-soled shoe. Rubber and synthetic petroleum foams are perfect electrical insulators. They are the exact materials we use to wrap copper wires so that electricity cannot escape. In a single generation, we placed a 1-inch slab of synthetic insulation between the soles of our feet and the surface of the planet. We completely, artificially severed the human body's electrical connection to the earth. We became ungrounded. We turned into isolated, floating bioelectrical islands, accumulating positive charge and oxidative stress in a modern world saturated with electromagnetic frequencies, with absolutely no way to discharge it back into the ground. When you take that shoe off and step onto bare earth, or when you place your bare hand on the trunk of a living tree whose deep taproots are buried in the soil, you close the circuit. Because the tree contains moisture and sap, it is an electrical conductor. Because your skin contains sweat and salt, it is a conductor. The moment you touch the bark, charge flows. Electrons move rapidly from the negative earth, up through the roots, up the trunk, across that microscopic air gap between the bark and your skin, and directly into your body. This is not a New Age metaphor. This is measurable biophysics. In 2013, cardiovascular researchers measured exactly what happens to human blood when this electron transfer occurs. They examined something called the Zeta potential. Zeta potential is the electrical charge on the surface of your red blood cells. This charge dictates how strongly your cells magnetically repel one another as they travel through your veins. If the charge is low, the cells clump together. They stack up like coins in a roll, a state called rouleau's formation. The blood becomes thick, viscous, and sluggish. It forces your heart to pump significantly harder just to push the sludge through your capillaries. When researchers grounded human subjects, connecting them electrically to the Earth, the massive influx of electrons instantly and dramatically increased the Zeta potential on the red blood cells. The cells became highly negatively charged. Because negative repels negative, the red blood cells violently pushed away from each other. The clumping vanished. The blood physically thinned. Its viscosity dropped. It flowed with vastly less cardiovascular resistance. You did not swallow a pharmaceutical blood thinner. You simply stood barefoot on the dirt. You absorbed the Earth's electrons, altered the magnetic repulsion of your own cells, and fundamentally changed your cardiovascular fluid dynamics. And you gave that biological superpower away the day you decided that a thick rubber sole was a requirement for stepping outside. Now look at the hand you placed on the wood. If you were standing in a forest right now touching a mature pine or oak tree, the electrical grounding would only be the first mechanism. The second mechanism happens entirely through the air. Trees release molecules into the surrounding atmosphere, not occasionally, constantly. These are volatile organic compounds, molecules like alpha-pinene, beta-pinene, and D-limonene. They have low molecular mass and high vapor pressure, meaning they easily transition from a liquid inside the tree to a gas floating in the air. Biologists call them phytoncides. The word was coined in 1928 by a Russian biologist named Boris Takin, and its literal, exact translation is, exterminated by the plant. These molecules are not released to make the forest smell nice. They are airborne chemical defense weapons. The tree manufactures them to kill bacteria, fungi, and insects that threaten its survival. The tree is waging relentless chemical warfare against anything small enough to be destroyed by airborne vapor. When these molecules enter the gas phase, they follow Fick's law of diffusion. They move from the high concentration at the surface of the bark to the lower concentration in the surrounding air. 1 hectare of pine forest releases roughly 5 kilograms of these antimicrobial molecules into the air every single day. The diffusion field around the tree is, quite literally, a sterilization zone. Forest air contains maybe 200 bacterial cells per cubic meter. City air contains thousands. When you stand next to the tree, you are standing inside the highest concentration of its diffusion cloud. Every time you inhale, your lungs pull 6 to 8 liters of air per minute. You pull these weaponized molecules across the thin membrane of your alveoli and directly into your bloodstream. And here is where the physics of the tree alters the biology of the human. In 2009, a research team led by Dr. Ching Li at the Nippon Medical School in Tokyo took human subjects into a forest, exposed them to these phytoncides, and measured what happened to their immune systems. They looked specifically at natural killer, NK cells. This is the elite, specialized class of lymphocytes in your immune system whose sole function is to hunt down, identify, and destroy tumor cells and virus-infected cells. When the subjects inhaled the tree's chemical weapons, their natural killer cell activity exploded. It increased significantly. But here is the terrifyingly powerful part. The increase did not last for an hour. It did not last for a day. A single exposure increased their immune cell activity for more than 7 days. When the subjects stayed in the forest for 2 to 3 days, their immune function remained elevated for more than 30 days. At the same exact time, The researchers measured the adrenaline and noradrenaline in the subject's urine, the primary hormones that drive your sympathetic fight-or-flight stress response plummeted. The tree's molecules physically deactivated their chemical stress pathways. Not a placebo, not the psychological benefit of fresh air or relaxing nature. Diffusion physics. Airborne chemical compounds crossing a pressure gradient into a biological lung, altering specific immune cell behavior and crushing stress hormones for a month. Take a step back and look at your modern environment. You insulated your feet with rubber, completely blocking the massive flow of free electrons the Earth provides to thin your blood and reduce systemic inflammation. You insulated your lungs by living inside hermetically sealed, climate-controlled drywall boxes. You cut yourself off entirely from the molecular diffusion of the forest, depriving your immune system of the phytoncide signals it evolved alongside for hundreds of thousands of years. You severed the electrical circuit below you. You severed the chemical gradient around you. You placed yourself in an artificial, sterilized, ungrounded vacuum. And then you wonder why chronic, systemic inflammation, autoimmune dysfunction, and unmanageable, toxic stress are the defining medical epidemics of the modern era. You are a zoo animal suffering from disease of captivity, completely disconnected from the physics of your natural habitat. But the most profound illusion is not what the tree does to you. It is what the tree actually is. Look at a massive, mature oak tree. It weighs roughly 10,000 pounds. Where did that mass come from? Intuition tells you it came from the dirt. The roots go deep, they suck up soil, the soil becomes wood. In 1648, a scientist named Jan Baptist van Helmont designed one of the most elegant experiments in history to prove exactly this. He took 200 pounds of completely dried soil, weighed it precisely, and put it in a pot. He planted a tiny 5-pound willow sapling in it. He covered the pot so no dust could enter, and for 5 years, he watered it with nothing but pure rainwater. 5 years later, he pulled the tree out. The 5-pound sapling was now a 169-pound tree. It had gained 164 pounds of solid mass. He dried the soil and weighed it again. The soil had lost less than 2 ounces. 164 pounds of solid wood had appeared out of nowhere, and it did not come from the dirt. The minerals in the soil, calcium, potassium, magnesium, make up barely 1 to 2% of a tree's total mass. Van Helmont concluded the mass must have come from the water, but water is H2O, hydrogen, and oxygen. Hydrogen has almost no mass, and wood is made of carbon. Half of the dry weight of any tree is pure carbon. There is no carbon in water. Van Helmont had eliminated the dirt, and he had eliminated the water. And he spent the rest of his life failing to realize that the answer was the invisible gas he was breathing while he stared at the tree. Carbon dioxide, CO2. A tree is not made of dirt. A tree is solidified air. Through tiny pores called stomata, the tree pulls invisible CO2 out of the atmosphere. Using the electromagnetic energy of sunlight, photons traveling 93 million miles to strike a chlorophyll molecule, the tree physically rips the carbon atom away from the oxygen. It spits the oxygen back out for you to breathe, and it chains the carbon atoms together to build glucose, which becomes cellulose, which becomes solid wood. Every wooden plank in your house, every massive redwood in the forest, it is crystallized atmosphere. It is invisible gas forged into solid mass by captured starlight. And right now, every time you exhale, you are breathing out carbon dioxide. Some of the carbon atoms leaving your lungs right now were once part of the food you ate, which was once a plant, which pulled it from the air. The carbon you exhale was once a fern 300 million years ago. And the tree standing in your yard is pulling the exact atoms you just exhaled out of the air, stripping them, and building them into its trunk. You are breathing out the very building blocks the tree is breathing in. You are not separate from the environment. You are actively, currently participating in the exact same carbon cycle, running the conservation of mass in opposite directions. And that tree you are looking at, the one pulling your carbon from the air, you think it is an individual, a solitary organism fighting for sunlight and water against all the other trees. In the 1990s, an ecologist named Susan Simard destroyed that illusion forever. She went into the forest, placed sealed plastic bags over individual seedlings, and injected them with radioactive carbon isotopes. Hours later, she took a Geiger counter to completely different, unexposed trees nearby. The Geiger counter clicked. The radioactive carbon had moved from one tree to another. They were not sharing it through the air. They were sharing it underground. Beneath the forest floor lies a massive, sprawling web of mycorrhizal fungi. Fungal threads, thinner than a human hair, connect the root system of one tree directly into the root system of another. It forms what network mathematicians call a scale-free network, the exact same mathematical architecture as the internet, or the neural pathways in your brain. The oldest, largest trees are the hubs, the mother trees. When young seedlings are stuck in the shade during the summer and cannot photosynthesize enough sugar to survive, the mother trees pump their own surplus carbon underground, through the fungal network, directly into the starving seedlings to keep them alive. When a tree is attacked by insects, it sends chemical distress signals through the fungal web. Neighboring trees receive the signal and begin producing defensive enzymes before the insects even reach them. And when a mother tree is dying, when the biology is finally failing, it does not just quietly rot. It dumps its massive carbon reserves into the network, a final, massive pulse of resources pushed outward to sustain the surrounding forest before the hub goes dark forever. You are not looking at a collection of individual trees. You are looking at a single, distributed superorganism, communicating via chemical signals through biological fiber optics in the dark. And if the tree is not killed by disease or chainsaws, its biology essentially does not age. Every animal has a biological clock. The telomeres on the ends of your chromosomes shorten every time your cells divide. Programmed senescence. You are biologically designed to eventually expire. Trees do not have this clock. The cells in their cambium layer, the thin ribbon of living tissue just beneath the bark, divide indefinitely. The enzyme telomerase actively rebuilds their chromosomes. A 5,000-year-old bristlecone pine tree shows no cellular evidence of aging. Its cells do not know how old they are. So what kills the immortal tree? Physics. Wind force scales with surface area. As a tree grows taller, the lever arm of the trunk massively amplifies the bending moment during a storm. Water transport scales with height. To pull water 300 feet straight up without a pump requires such extreme negative pressure that eventually the water column simply snaps, a cavitation limit. Trees are biologically immortal organisms trapped inside physical structures that engineering will eventually break. They are killed by the square cube law, by wind shear, by gravity, never by old age. We need to calibrate the science, so you know exactly what is proven fact. The Zeta potential shift from electrical grounding is peer-reviewed cardiovascular science. The reduction of blood viscosity from electron transfer is measurable and documented. The Phytoncide effect on natural killer cells and stress hormones is established, highly cited Japanese immunology, forming the basis of Shinrin-yoku, or forest bathing medical therapies. The carbon origin of trees, Van Helmont's experiment and the mechanics of photosynthesis, is the bedrock foundation of botany. Susan Simard's mycorrhizal networks are the new gold standard of forest ecology. While the exact volume of carbon shared is debated by some strict competitors in the field, the physical existence of the network and the transfer of chemical signals is absolute, proven fact. The biology is real, the physics is real. Put your shoe back on. Feel the thick, dead rubber wrap around your heel. Feel the absolute insulation. Feel the physical disconnection from the electrical grid of the planet. Tomorrow, when you walk outside, do not just walk on the concrete. Find a patch of grass. Find a patch of bare dirt. Find a tree that has survived the physics of the world for 100 years. Take the rubber shoe off. Place your bare foot on the ground. Place your bare hand on the bark. Know that the electrons are rushing up from the earth to thin your blood. Know that the chemical weapons are diffusing into your lungs to armor your immune system. Know that the wood under your hand is the crystallized breath of the world, assembled by the energy of a star, connected to a vast, invisible brain beneath the soil. It is not a metaphor, it is not spiritual mysticism, it is physics, it is biology. Touch the ground,